Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving into what is literally the most dramatic sprint in ancient history, the incredible rise and sudden fall of Alexander the Great. Today we're dissecting how a young prince from a rugged mountainous kingdom in northern Greece somehow transformed the map of the ancient world in just an absolute blur of momentum. It's a crazy story full of tactical genius, relentless ambition, and ultimately, profound tragedy. Let's get right into it.
We really have to start with this massive question, because the sheer scale of what this young Macedonian king achieved completely defies logic. Seriously, put yourself in his shoes for just a second. You're 20 years old. You're suddenly handed the throne of Macedon, a kingdom that sophisticated Greeks essentially look down on as a rural backwater. To your south, rival city-states are plotting against you, and to the east lies the Persian Achaemenid Empire, an absolute, undeniable superpower. How on earth do you go from simply defending your own borders to sitting on the throne of the known world?
Well, the answer comes down to this one staggering number, 10. Just 10 years. That is all it took for him to carve out one of the largest empires humanity has ever known. From the moment he crossed the Hellespont into Asia in 334 BC to his final conquest in India, Alexander waged a decade-long military campaign where he didn't lose a single battle. Not one. He was a total force of nature, moving with a speed that just left his enemies completely paralyzed. Okay, let's look at part 1, the boy king's ascent. His father, King Philip II, reportedly said this quote after a 10-year-old Alexander fearlessly tamed a wild horse named Bucephalus. Philip had basically dismissed the horse as completely unbreakable, but young Alexander noticed something that literally everyone else missed. The horse was simply terrified of its own shadow. By just turning the horse toward the sun, Alexander calmed the animal down and successfully mounted it. It was this brilliant early sign that Alexander's true weapon wasn't just brute strength, it was his acute observation. And that perceptive, highly calculating mindset was sharpened even further by his personal tutor, none other than the great philosopher Aristotle, who taught him medicine, logic, and gave him a deep, lifelong obsession with the heroes of Homer's Iliad. But the catalyst for his world-changing run came super suddenly. In 336 BC, King Philip was assassinated by his own bodyguard at a wedding. Just like that, this 20-year-old Aristotle-tutored prince is thrust directly into power, and Alexander wasted absolutely zero time. He eliminated rival claimants to the throne and immediately marched south to crush rebellions in Greece, making a notoriously brutal example of the city of Thebes by completely razing it to the ground. With his home base secured and undisputed leadership of the Greek alliance locked down, he was finally ready to take on his father's grand dream.
That takes us to Section 2, crushing the Persian superpower.
You've got to understand the ruthless military machine Alexander inherited from his father. While your traditional Greek hoplite fought with an 8-foot spear, the Macedonians were wielding the sarissa, a massive, unwieldy 18-foot pike. When deployed in a tightly packed formation that was 16 ranks deep, this created a solid, bristling wall of iron spear tips. Coming at it from the front, it was virtually an unstoppable meat grinder.
And this created a huge tactical mismatch against the Persians. See, the Persians relied heavily on massive numbers of light infantry, archers, and exceptional cavalry, but they were armed with much shorter weapons like scimitars and javelins. Alexander totally exploited this with his legendary hammer and anvil tactic. His veteran infantry general, Parmenion, would hold the enemy in place using that unyielding phalanx, that's the anvil. Meanwhile, Alexander himself would personally lead the elite companion cavalry to strike the enemy's weak points, acting as the hammer.
I absolutely love this anecdote from his early campaign in Asia Minor because it just perfectly encapsulates his whole vibe. He was presented with this impossibly tangled knot, and legend claimed that only the future ruler of Asia could untie it. Well, Alexander didn't sit there trying to painstakingly unravel it like a traditional, overly logical thinker. Nope, he was direct, he was forceful, and he definitely didn't play by established rules. He just drew his sword and hacked the thing right in half. It was a violent, totally decisive statement of intent. But think about the staggering odds he faced at the Battle of Gaugamela. This was the final decisive showdown. Persian King Darius III brought an army that vastly outnumbered the Macedonians. Darius even completely cleared the battlefield of debris, so his terrifying scythe chariots could charge in without any issues. Yet, through a brilliant series of lateral cavalry movements, Alexander basically baited the Persians into stretching their own lines. The very second a tiny gap opened in the Persian center, Alexander formed a wedge with his cavalry and charged straight at King Darius himself. It completely routed the Persian army and sent Darius fleeing for his life.
Moving right along to Section 3, the edge of the world.
His unbroken winning streak across this timeline was just a sheer blur of momentum. He crossed from the river Granicus in Turkey, tore down through Syria, went into Egypt where he was literally pronounced the son of the deity Amun, marched straight into Mesopotamia to conquer Babylon, and eventually pushed all the way into modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. Along the way, he kept founding these new cities, and humbly named almost all of them Alexandria. He even named one after his horse, Bucephalus. He was quite literally marching his men right off the edges of the maps known to the ancient Greeks.
But in India, things changed. In 326 BC, he faced an entirely new type of warfare. Fighting against King Porus, this became his costliest battle yet. The Macedonians were confronted by a terrifying corps of actual war elephants, these massive beasts that easily trampled infantry and absolutely terrified the horses. But again, Alexander adapted brilliantly. He forced his men to do the unthinkable, to literally open their ranks and let the charging elephants pass right through. This allowed his soldiers to strike at the elephant handlers and the unprotected flanks of the beasts. He won the battle, and honestly, he was so impressed by King Porus's bravery that he actually reinstated him as a governor of his own kingdom.
Now for Section 4, Mutiny and Megalomania.
Alexander's unparalleled success started to create a really dangerous paradox from within. See, to rule his newly conquered vast empire effectively, he realized he couldn't just act like a foreign European conqueror. He needed to actually adopt Persian customs. So he started wearing Persian dress and attempted to introduce proskynesis, demanding people bow or prostrate themselves before him. This deeply alienated his loyal Macedonian veterans. To a Greek, a king was just the first among equals. Bowing like that was something you only ever did for the gods. They started to feel like their king was succumbing to an Oriental lifestyle and a very dangerous god complex.
This cascading sequence of tensions finally snapped at the Hyphasis River. Think about what his soldiers had endured up to this point. They had marched thousands of miles, they hadn't seen their families in 8 long years, and now they were trekking through literal monsoon rains. So when they heard rumors that gigantic Indian empires lay just ahead, waiting for them with thousands more of those terrifying war elephants, the exhausted, homesick army flat out mutinied. They refused to march another step. Alexander raged, he literally sulked in his tent for days, but ultimately he had to yield. For the first time, he was forced to turn back.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the fragmented legacy.
So he heads back to Babylon, and Alexander being Alexander, he was already planning a massive new campaign into Arabia. But the guy was physically worn down, covered head to toe in old battle scars, and emotionally shattered by the recent, devastating death of his lifelong best friend and general, Hephaestion. Following a night of heavy drinking, Alexander fell ill. Over 12 agonizing days, he lost his voice and grew increasingly weak. And then, at the insanely young age of 32, the undefeated conqueror died of a mysterious fever. Historians still debate if it was malaria, typhoid, or maybe even poison. His sudden death left his vast new empire completely shocked and totally leaderless.
According to the ancient historian Diodorus, the end was chilling. When his generals gathered around his deathbed and desperately asked him to whom he bequeathed this massive empire, Alexander's final decree was simply, to the strongest. Now, whether he actually said this or if it was just later propaganda invented by his generals, it virtually guaranteed absolute chaos.
It's kind of the ultimate irony, isn't it? The very traits that made him an unstoppable conqueror made him a terrible empire builder. He left no stable succession plan. Almost immediately, his most trusted commanders, known as the Diadochi, or successors, violently turned on each other. They fought a brutal 40-year civil war that resulted in the murder of Alexander's entire remaining family, including his own young son. Ultimately, his massive, unified empire fractured into 3 main rival power blocks that would rule all the way until the rise of Rome.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought to ponder regarding the man whose 10-year sprint changed the globe forever. Yes, his political empire died almost the exact moment he did. But by marching a Greek army all the way to India, founding countless cities, and actively encouraging his men to intermarry with local populations, he permanently connected the East and the West. He single-handedly ushered in the Hellenistic Age, which was this incredible era of cultural, scientific, and linguistic fusion. So, what do you think? Was his greatest achievement the brilliant battles he won, or the connected world he unintentionally left behind? Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning history.